The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Podcast Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate.
You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hello and welcome to our discussion of The Natural, where we're talking about the hidden meanings and deeper layers found in the classic baseball movie. I'm Father Cory Sticha. With me today are David Handlos. How's it going, David?
Hello, I'm doing all right.
And Jon Koral. How's it going?
Hello, I'm doing great.
Good. Glad to have you both here. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you to join in the discussion of this movie and our other shows on our Discord at sqpn.com/discord. And you can get your StarQuest merch at sqpn.com/merch. So before we begin talking about this movie, I'm going to give a little quick summary here of this great classic baseball movie. Growing up in Nebraska, Roy Hobbs clearly had a natural talent for baseball, which his father encouraged. His father, however, died of a heart attack while Roy was at a young age. Roy continued his interest in baseball, even turning some of the tree his father died under into a baseball bat after it had been struck by lightning. Flash forward to high school, and his neighbor Iris has become his high school sweetheart. Roy's talent has blossomed, and a scout for the Chicago Cubs takes him on the train for a tryout. Along the way, he meets sport reporter Max Mercy and baseball star The Whammer. A wager during a water refueling stop lets Roy show his arm, striking out The Whammer with 3 pitches. He also catches the eye of Harriet Bird, who ends up stalking him. She invites him to her room, where she shoots him in the stomach before committing suicide. Roy survives, but it seems that his career is over. 16 years later, Roy is signed to the New York Knights, a perpetually struggling team. Though the manager, Pop Fisher, is unwilling to let him play, Roy quickly shows his ability and earns his position on the team. Almost immediately, the team's luck turns around and begins to win, climbing the standings. This alarms the judge, a co-owner of the team, who stands to take complete ownership from Pop if the team doesn't earn a pennant at the end of the season. The judge conspires with Gus Sands, a high-stakes gambler, and Mimo Paris, the beautiful former girlfriend of a Knights player who died, to distract Roy so that the team would start losing again. Meanwhile, Iris is following Roy's career from Chicago and attends a game while he is in the midst of his slump. After Roy sees her, he literally knocks the cover off the ball and his slump is broken. This leads to him reconnecting with her and pulling away from Mimo's influence. However, things are about to get worse. The silver bullet from Harriet Bird's shot remained in his stomach and was eating away at Roy's stomach lining. After becoming ill during a party, Roy is rushed to a maternity hospital and the bullet removed. Despite being told that continuing to play baseball would kill him and an attempted bribe by the judge, Roy returns to the Knights for the final game of the regular season. During the game, Roy is struggling due to his injury. However, Iris is there with her son, and she sends down a note to tell Roy that her son was also his. This energizes Roy, and he is able to win the game with a 3-run home run that causes the stadium lights to explode in sparks. The Knights win the pennant, saving the team from the judge and putting it in Pop's ownership. The movie closes with Roy playing catch with his son in the field, where he played with his dad. So, David, what did you think of this movie?
Well, this just kind of, I'm from the Midwest and I work in Nebraska. So
there you go.
So this, just seeing that just reminds me of the ball fields that I grew up watching ball in the summer. And it just reminded me of, granted, I grew up in the 80s, but still in a way, it still reminded me of home. So just seeing that, but just seeing people play ball, that they and they really actually enjoyed it. And then I just huge wave of nostalgia, especially with Wilford Brimley in there.
Oh yeah.
Just watching this movie reminds me of basically just reminds me of childhood all over again. Just watching people play ball for the fun of it.
Great. How about you, John?
I've always enjoyed watching it. I remember seeing it the first time when I was 10 years old, and at the movie theater, and it just. I think one of the things that really makes it special, or not special, but interesting, is it's kind of like a Norman Rockwell painting. The way they just picked the game and, kind of the purity of, what you would like your baseball stars to be and stuff like that. And then you still have the other characters like, the Whammer, like who's kind of a Babe Ruth and stuff. But I think that's what drew me into it was the the feeling, like you said, of a Norman Rockwell painting, but then also the music was really stirring, and it seems like every time that there's quiet for a lot of the dialogue, and then once that music starts up, it just like swells up in you, and it just kind of takes you away with the action. That's, I think, the other thing that really captured me. Well, when I watched it the first time, and then subsequent times.
Oh yeah, it is interesting. Is I realized when I watched this to prepare for this recording, I had never actually seen it all the way through. It's one of those movies that has become really part of kind of our American cultural surroundings, and you see clips from it, and some of the plot lines and stuff from it, but I had never actually sat down and watched it. It's just one of those movies that I guess I knew about, and I knew it but I never sat down. So this was kind of a treat for me as well to kind of watch it for the first time all the way through, and it was very, very. Just, it's an enjoyable movie. It's such a great movie. It is. I agree that the setting, of course, in the first part of it's in, the teens, 19 teens or so. And then the latter part of the movie is in the late 30s. And, again, it was more of a time where things just seemed a little more idealistic. Whether or not they really were is another story. Yeah. But this really, and it shows the love of the sport for baseball, and yeah, it was just in great movie. And of course, I enjoyed the cars because I'm a car nut, and all the old cars. I love that part too. Oh. But yeah. So this is a movie that came out in 1984. So it's actually going on its 40th anniversary here pretty quick. It's hard, kind of one of those. It's hard to believe that it's been that long since this came out.
Then I'm only anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I know that feeling. It's like, what do you mean the 80s weren't 20 years ago anymore?
Right. Well, I forgot to mention sorry, just the last thing was about this movie. Just that, I mean, the other reason that this hooked me was that Robert Redford's left-handed, and I played ball left-handed. I was a lefty, so just and
there you go.
You were active, back in those days, you were actively discouraged from being a left-handed anything. So
yeah, especially back in the 20s and 30s in that era, much less into the 80s.
Yeah, heck, my grandfather was, and he just joked that he was just too dumb for them to work it out of them. So.
Well, I'll say this too. It's like that was one of the things that I liked about the movie too, because even though I threw right-handed, I batted left-handed. So I liked having that little connection with Robert Redford. And then another thing too, as I was thinking about this, is that because when you mentioned your grandfather, my grandfather was at one point was a minor league pitcher for the Portsmouth Pirates.
Oh wow!
And so even at one point I drove to Portsmouth, which isn't too far from where I grew up in Cincinnati, to try to research some more of his, the paper stories and stuff. And, whereas he never made it to the majors or anything, but he did have, some players that did, especially when World War II came around.
Oh, sure.
Then,
wow.
You would see that some of those players were brought up because the major league players were, taken overseas a lot of times. So I saw some of those same names, like in the baseball encyclopedia. I was like, oh, okay, there was this player and there he was. But, so that was kind of neat. But that's also, I think, what connected me to the game more was the movie was, like you were saying, the time frame and as well.
Yeah, and it is interesting that this is set right before World War II, as well. 1939 is what I've seen online. I don't remember if the movie even shows the exact date in the movie.
Well, it does show it, like Bump Bailey on his grave or his memorial.
Right. That's
where I saw it.
Yeah, I think that's the only place. I don't think we see like on a newspaper. You see newspapers, but I don't think you actually see the date on it. Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, so it's literally right before World War II. World War II is just starting, warm up at this point. And again, there is kind of the innocence that's going on in this movie, which just makes it interesting for what will come after in the next couple of years. But yeah, it's just a great movie. I love baseball. I've always loved baseball. I played a little bit and I really wasn't that great at it, but I've always loved watching baseball. And so, yeah, the baseball scenes are fun, even especially the ones where they're not doing so well.
Yeah.
You get all the bloopers and everything. this another thing about this movie, it was based on a book written in 1952, so actually not that long after when it was set. And it sounds like the book itself has quite a few changes, or the movie changed quite a few things from the book. I think, John, you were saying it was like some of the names have changed, and
Well, yeah, the one name was Iris Gaines in the movie. Is that, I saw that on Amazon. It was actually, I think, Iris Lemon in the book. And it's been 30 years since I read the book, so I don't remember all. But then there is like a different ending in the book, and so there are some significant changes that.
But the main story is kind of the same.
It's one of the things, though, where I like the book better, or the movie better than the book, which isn't always the case. But
no.
And the book was actually I cannot pronounce the guy's name, but the book was actually based on an actual player, at least inspired by, who was a player who was shot, and then made a comeback later.
Yeah. So the shooting scene was the player was Eddie Waitkus.
There you go.
Waitkus. And he was at the time was playing for the Pirates. Or no, excuse me, not the Pirates, the Phillies, I think it was. And had this stalker from Chicago who, when he was traded from Chicago, she went and did this when it shot him. But fortunately, in his case, he only lost half the season and came back the next season and did well. But it wasn't quite the same scenario. There wasn't the suicide attempt, I think, on the part of the shooter. She
was just confined to a mental institution for a while, because that was, stalking wasn't a thing back then. I mean, fan stalking wasn't a thing quite back then.
Yeah, not quite to this level. At least people didn't quite know it. And of course, in this movie, she's done it to a couple of players, and he was kind of her last one. Because it's a line that goes by really quickly, where they talk about how these two people had been shot by someone with silver bullets, and then that's what she does. She shoots Roy with the silver bullet and then commits suicide afterwards. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, and the movie does a good job, though. I mean, it was obvious that she was coming after the Whammer, because she was going after like an Olympic star and then a football star or something, and then she went after the biggest baseball star, who would have been the Whammer at the time.
Yep.
And then when they have that 3 pitches on the on the side of the train tracks, and then and Roy gets the 3rd strike, they do a good job of seeing how she shifts her eyes from the Whammer over to Roy, and then now he's the target.
Yeah, she wanted nothing to do with him on the train at first, until she saw what he was capable of, and then all of a sudden, Whammer who?
Mm-hmm.
She wanted everything to do with him at that point. Going to the opening scene, let's kind of jump back to there. It's such a interesting and powerful scene where he's playing playing catch with his dad, and he clearly has the ability. I love that where the dad draws a circle on the chicken barn, and he throws the ball right through it, and you just see this chicken looking out, going, "What was that?"
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was such a interesting scene, but it was do you see him, like he's obviously got this talent, and his dad is encouraging it, and it kind of similar note to or kind of an opposite note actually from Field of Dreams. We had talked about Field of Dreams a few months ago, and it's kind of the opposite note where Kevin Costner's character wasn't interested in playing catch with his dad, and now this is the opposite. Is Roy wanted to play catch with dad. He wanted to play baseball. He wanted to do these things with dad, and his dad has that heart attack at a relatively young age. Roy was still preteen, I would guess, before high school. But it was that was obviously an important moment in his life. And then we have the tree getting struck by lightning, and of course that's where he takes his lightning bolt he puts on the bat that he makes out of it. And that's such a cool scene to watch him, where he's actually turning the bat and everything. And
yeah, that's I remember. The funny thing is, I saw the Simpsons episode that was based on this before I saw this movie.
Nice.
Where, of course, Homer makes a bat called Wonder Bat, and it's nothing really that inspired about why he he was doing the most dangerous thing you could think. Like he was, a storm was coming, so he grabbed a metal sheet to put over his head to protect himself from the rain in a thunderstorm, and he ran underneath the tallest tree he could find.
Yeah,
that's exactly as he narrates it, and then it gets hit by lightning, and then of course I see the movie. I'm like, okay, this makes much more sense.
Yeah,
this is much better done.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's good too, though, is in the before, when his dad is talking to him and he tells him, you've got our gift, Roy, but it's not enough. You've got to develop yourself, and then rely too much on your own gift and you'll fail. But
Right.
The guidance, and then it's interesting how that'll come up later again and stuff. But
exactly
the guidance of a father there.
Yeah, well, and saying that, okay, you might be able, you'll get noticed for your ability. Basically, saying you get noticed for your ability, but you've got to be a fuller person. You can't just be baseball player. And that was kind of what you see the Whammer. That's kind of who he was. Where he would do the. Oh, it's always great to meet a member of the general public, and kind of that was just kind of pass him off. But he didn't have a lot of character. He was the Whammer. He was this big slugger. Babe Ruth. Kind of based on Babe Ruth. I don't know if Babe Ruth was quite as crass.
Depends on which newspaper clippings you read from back in the day.
Yeah.
But,
let me guess, which one's like Babe Ruth? He was the greatest guy. If he wasn't, he was a jerk.
Right. No. Yeah, it was all or nothing sometimes in those. But
in other words, just like the media today.
Pretty much. Yep. So some things never change. Yeah, some things never change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we think the media today is divided and corrupt and all that stuff. It's like, oh, you look at the media back in the early 1900s.
Oh,
they were pretty bad. They could be pretty bad. There were some muckraker comes out of that era with good reason. And of course, in the beginning here, we also get introduced to Iris Gaines, the neighbor that he clearly has some interest in. And when, of course, as he goes into high school, they see that interest is a little more than just friendship, shall we say? But she ends up being his high school sweetheart and the girl that he's going to marry and everything. And well, plans don't quite go as he expected. We find out later, though, that the night before was much more significant than what he thought.
Yes,
to say the least. I love the scene on the train. The scene on the train was so interesting, where again, this is the first time he'd ever been on the train, and so he's not sure of himself. And you see, this is where you get to meet these characters. We get to meet Max, and Max kind of, yeah, whatever. I don't know who you are. I don't care until he shows who he really is. He gets to actually show his ability, and he's just there until time comes. But
and then you meet with Max, and then the Whammer, and then you do get to see, though, how impatient the Whammer gets. It's like he can be good for a moment or two, and then if you just keep talking to him a little more, then he's like, "All right, let's play cards. Let's do whatever and stuff." But yeah, the train was neat, and the one thing too, and it's throughout the movie, is like when he gets on the train. There's so many scenes where you see something, then something happens, and then the person disappears. And it's like, so you see him sitting, then he disappears and he's on the train. You see Harriet Bird outside. She's standing, waiting to get on the train. Then she disappears, and it's like, they've used that, throughout the movie, like Max Mercy in the stands. And that, it's just kind of, I just found that, I never noticed, I noticed it here or there, but then I noticed it, man, this is like something that the director really used a lot with that, but. But no, the train scene definitely just getting that, you get a feel for who his manager is, and as well as the introduction to Max Mercy.
Yeah, and it was just and then when the train pulls over and they have to refuel it, because it's an old steam train. Of course, you have to refuel with water, not just with coal or whatever they used for fuel, but you had to refill it with water as well, and that would take half an hour. And there just happens to be a carnival there, and so much fun. The Whammer's there. Oh, he's putting on a show. He's doing home run derby right there. And Roy goes and he just does pitch the pitch, ball pitch, and he's just knocking him down. And there's just a few people kind of hanging around, just kind of watching, but nothing like the Whammer, where it's like, oh, this big star came to town. But Roy gets to show who he is.
And they did a good job too with that. Yeah. With there seemed to be when they get to the three pitches. and the sun going down. And there's, in the beginning when he's playing with his father, throwing the baseball, it's, there's a lot of the golden fields or whatever. Then you get that same kind of feel there out there by the train tracks. And then of course, as the music builds up too for it over time, but
yeah, they're great. They're just great at setting the scene.
Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, the cinematography in this is just incredible. The sets that they come up, or the views that they come up, the scenes they come up with and everything are just, just gorgeous in some cases. And again, it's that particular scene. It's just that golden hour, that perfect hour right before sunset. And yeah, it's a great, just interesting scene. Another really interesting scene. He's nothing special, or he doesn't look like anything special. He's very reserved. That's one thing you have to say about Roy. A lot of things. He's very reserved until he gets excited.
And that's part of the thing that makes him such a mystery to everybody throughout most of the film.
And but even though he's reserved, he is confident. That's the thing. It's like, it's not that he's just sitting there nervous about stuff or quiet, because he's got a quiet confidence about him. And whereas the Whammer is just a blusterous guy who's, he can hit the ball far and is a great player, but he'll let you know it with his words as well as his bat. Yeah,
exactly. But we keep mentioning the music. Randy Newman was the composer of the music for this, and it's just excellent. I mean, it's one of those scores that's so well known. If you're familiar with baseball, or you're familiar with movies, this is one of those movies that the scores is people listen to it all the time, kind of thing. So it's so well known. I love the third pitch where Max is standing behind as basically as umpire, and he takes about 5 steps back. He's like, I'm not going to stand right behind you for this one, because he sees that Roy can throw the heat. He's throwing it good. He's throwing it right down the middle, and just the Whammer doesn't even stand a chance. But he's like, no, I'm not going to stand that close. Look at it.
Well, and on that first pitch, there's a nice little piece of humor when he throws that pitch and Bud Simpson catches it, and he's shaking his hand because it hurts so much.
Right.
And he's like, are you okay, Bud? And he's like, oh, it's this darn glove. Like, and stuff.
Blame the glove, yeah.
Yeah. But it's those little lines too that, are kind of like throughout the movie that just make you laugh, or, just a little humor, but it adds to the heartwarming feel of the movie.
Exactly.
And then after that third strike, though, the thing that I like too, though, is when he's running back onto the train, and then you have that little moment with the boy saying, "Hey, mister, what's your name?"
Yeah. Well, he forgot his coat. He had to get his coat from the kid, and
and then he throws the ball to him, and it's like a picture perfect moment. It's like, imagine, that kind of thing too, and a nice wholesome, happy moment. That was kind of, but that kind of stuff is just, like I said, throughout the movie, it's neat. And that's the thing I like about him too, is like even later on, how he interacts with the kids. He's always making time for them, which is what you want your superstars to have, and not just blow them off. That's just here, let me give you a little time, and that little time really has a big impact on that child.
Absolutely. It's just very down to earth. That's one thing about this character. Throughout the whole thing, he's very down to earth. I mean, he knows he's good at baseball, and he knows he's got the ability, but he doesn't brag about it. And I know that's part of the reason why the Whammer is kind of at the beginning of this, to show the contrast between this big superstar who knows he's good, and he, like you said, he knows he's good, and he's gonna let you know he's good. And then Roy, he almost seems out of place.
He's there to do the job. He's gonna do the job, and then he's done. That's it. Yep.
Exactly.
We do find out though that Roy does have the same goals as the Whammer, though. I mean, the Whammer, because early on, Harriet Bird asked him, Max Mercy, if the Whammer's the best, and he says he's the best ever was, the best there is now, and the best there ever will be. And then you find out Roy Hobbs, though, that's his goal is that when somebody sees him walking down the road, the street, they'll say, there goes Roy Hobbs, the best there ever was, and stuff. And so it's like he does have this goal he is reserved and all that, but he also has a burning desire to get that recognition of being the best and wanting to achieve that kind of level.
Yeah, he is still human. There's no, not going to debate that. He's still a very human guy.
Yeah. And that kind of leads to his downfall at the first part of the movie where they get to Chicago and she's Harriet Bird is paying lots of attention to him, because he's going to be the biggest player and she wants to go after the biggest player and biggest baseball player. And so she goes to the same hotel, just happens to be in the same hotel that they're staying at. What a coincidence. And then when he goes down, she it looks like she's going to try to seduce him, but instead tries to kill him. Shoots him it ends up shooting him in the stomach. And then we see through a picture that she had committed suicide afterwards. And that pretty much just because of his being human, that seemed like his career would be over at that point.
You're right. But then trying to, I was looking at, they don't really fill in the gaps between that much between this and then the next thing you know, he's signing it, not 16 years later, he's back at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't say, and even he kind of says he just kind of was here or there. So was he playing, and there was kind of a hint that for some of it, he was playing, like local baseball and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing like he was even semi-pro until right before he was picked up by the Knights.
But obviously he never went home.
Nope. No, we know that for a fact because he would have connected with Iris most likely.
And he was, he did spend 2 years in a hospital, he says, when he's talking to her at one point.
2 years.
But then, you wonder when Max Mercy is saying, here are all these rumors that you might have been involved with the circus, or you could have been, or something, it was just like, and then you might have even killed someone or something like that. So it's like, maybe there were some stories, maybe he did go do something like, maybe he was hitting home runs like the Whammer somewhere, or at one point, I don't know. But
pitches,
but it's just, but yeah, there is a lot of mystery because he only accounts for like 3 or 4 of those years. It sounds, it seems like. But then again, if it was 39, from 30 to 39, that would be the great, would that be the Great Depression? So work would have been hard, and who knows what he was doing through all that time.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Yeah, this is kind of one of the reasons why when I look at this, I really see it kind of as a fairy tale type story, where they're not worried about filling in all the details, and it's not meant to be gritty and realistic. And, it's got, another analogy people use is King Arthur tales, the knight, how he's like King Arthur and things like that, where it is kind of it's a fictionalized story, but it does have, like I said, kind of that fairy tale type elements.
Yeah. He's remember if, he's originally being brought to the majors as a pitcher. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously he gets shot. And then later, when he catches on at the Knights, he's known as a hitter.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that's, I always thought that part was interesting that, that was another part of the mystery that, no one knew he could really pitch and right off the bat. So that just kind of lent a little air of mystery to the whole thing. Where he just did, he does all, after pitching being his biggest thing, that's not what he led with by the time he finally made it onto the majors.
Well, and it's even, you could tell he hadn't pitched in a while because he, when he did throw that one pitch, he, it's like his arm was, wasn't used to it. Mm-hmm. He's like, got sore and stuff like that from throwing it. Like he threw his arm, something he had done, but he hadn't done that in a long time, and his body is kind of rebelling against it.
I was wondering if he was gun shy. Sorry, that was a terrible choice of words, but gun shy. But I was just of pitching after that, because that was that brought a low point to his life, and just stopped pitching after that. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering though, it's like maybe the injury from the bullet, made it hard for him to throw like that. That
It could be true too.
Because when he threw the pitch, you could tell his arm was a little out of whack too from it, but he also seemed like he was, I don't know if he reached or stretching a certain way because maybe that caused him pain down there. And then through those 16 years, he had to become a hitter in order to come back or to have the chance he couldn't pitch. I don't know.
Well, also as someone who tried to do something when he was 35 after 10 years of not doing it, I'll tell you. Oof.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's things that we all probably did when we were much younger that if we tried now, we would be visiting the doctor very quickly.
Oof.
But yeah, and I love that where they introduce that he's coming in. Literally, he's just walking up the tunnel to the bullpen, right, or to the dugout right during a game. Just nondescript, not like showing up in the office or anything. He just shows up in his fedora and leather jacket, and hey, I'm here to play.
And Pop Fisher delivers one of the best lines about we don't need any middle-aged rookies.
Yeah.
And it's like just again one of those little lines that get thrown in there, but it's just and I always find myself laughing or really enjoying those. But what I was wondering though is a little bit later when he's getting when he finally agrees to let him be on the team, he says he goes to was it Dr. Dizzy or whatever to suit up, and then he goes in there and the guy says. He says, how about 11? He goes, that's a bad luck number, but I don't want to go into that now. I'm like, I wonder what makes that a bad luck number before he chooses number 9. But
yeah,
it's like, but then his introduction to the rest of the team, everybody thinks he's a coach and not a player. And
yeah,
that was fun.
It's neat to see how, he interacts with them.
Well, it's interesting too, because of course, Pop Fisher is like, well, you'll be on the team. You won't set foot on the field, but you'll be on the team.
Yeah.
And they had to have that whole series of scenes where he's sitting there and they're having the little counselor psychologist there. Losing is like an addiction. And, it's like this. It's like, you use all these different analogies for what it's like. And eventually Roy just, I'm done, walks out. Gets yelled at. Yeah.
Losing is a disease as contagious as polio.
Yeah.
Losing is a disease as contagious as bubonic plague,
Yeah.
And then you're just looking at all the bad play at the same time. And it's just, that's Dr. Knobs is one of the, and then the way they put that over all those plays, is just, it's, instead of feeling bad, you're just enjoying the humor.
Yeah, exactly. And it is cool. I thought it was kind of cool where Roy's just like, I'm done. I'm here, but I'm not going to do this kind of stuff. And he walks out and he's, of course, Pop Fisher immediately starts yelling at him about participating and everything like that. And, and be here at batting practice tomorrow, kind of for your final chance. And he's like, I have been every day. Where he's willing to even just go there and be humiliated of sitting on the bench during batting practice. But he's been there. And he gets his chance and shows him what he can do.
And what's neat is the next day at batting practice, and, he gets up there and hits his first home run. And then all of a sudden, Pop Fisher takes a sip of water from the water fountain.
Oh, yeah.
And it starts tasting okay because before that, they've been spitting out the water every time they take a sip of how bad it tastes.
Yep. Well, it really is
like a fairy tale.
A symbol. Well, it's a symbol because as Roy goes, the team goes. So when he's hot, the team gets hot. When he starts struggling, the team struggles. And it's very. But yeah, there's that where the water you look at it. It's rust brown. It's nasty. And it's like, but he doesn't care at that point.
Right.
He's like, hey, we got somebody that could hit.
Mm-hmm.
And he does. And then, well, of course, then you have the scenes where he's hitting homer after homer. I mean, he's just clobbering it. This is, again, a bit unrealistic how far and how hard he hits it.
And they think he's hitting it with a cork bat, with Wonder Boy there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where did you get that bat? Well, I made it. Well, we need to weigh it. We need to make sure it's
not
legal.
hollow.
And of course it is. So he keeps using it and keeps hitting. But,
yeah, it's like, as long as when he struggles, it's just kind of, it's not as bad as when he was, shot all those years ago. But yeah, just whenever he starts slipping a little bit morally, his game slips as well. So
yeah, and that's where you got kind of the good versus evil between Iris and, now is it Mimo's how I thought it sounded like they pronounced her name. Was her Memo?
Well, I thought they said Mimo, but it looks, I mean, it's spelled Memo. But
yep,
yeah,
that's what I thought. That's what I thought too. But you got that that good versus evil, the light versus the dark, and it's even with the attires. Through most of it, Mimo is wearing black or dark colors, and Iris is wearing white or light colored. And when he's with Mimo, he's slipping, he's slumping, he's not doing well, he's distracted, and she's kind of leading him astray. But then Iris comes in, and the light, of course, that scene where she's standing there and her hat is glowing like a halo around her head, and he turns around.
And then it's literally an instant transformation. And he doesn't knock it out of the park, but is it the scoreboard he busts?
No, the clock.
The clock.
Yeah.
The clock. That's what.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All of a sudden he starts hitting again because now he's got Iris back in his life, and he does kind of fades away from Mimo. He's been spending time with her and sleeping with her and all this stuff. And now Iris gets into the picture, and he kind of fades away from her. He's not as involved with her as much, and he gets back to it. But no, that's where it's kind of interesting, where he gets, of course, if you watch baseball, players go through slumps. They go through periods where they do really well and periods where they don't. And like you said, it's when he's acting immorally, when he's, involved with Mimo, he slumps. As soon as he gets away from her or starts to get away from her, he kind of comes back.
I always like early on too, when, when Iris doesn't know, where Roy is, and then she's at that Parkside candy store or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're just reading, and Al's talking to the other person about this guy, that they have this newspaper article about him because of his first game when he knocks the cover off the ball with the lightning strike. And then, it's just neat because then he mentions, they're talking about Wonder Boy, the bat, and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, she perks up and like, Wonder Boy, and then Roy, then she knows who he is. And then,
oh yeah,
but she's been in Chicago, 10 or 12 years, probably trying to find him because that's where he was going to be for his tryout.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it was neat just to see how, she came about, or how they showed how she found out about Roy back again.
Yep. She goes to the game, and then they end up meeting up and everything. And she kind of hints that her son is his as well, but doesn't explicitly say it. And I almost got the feeling like he didn't quite get it,
Right.
Well, I was pretty sure he didn't get it because she was, his dad lives in New York, or I think it was the phrase or something like that. And it's just like, like in many cases, us guys have to have it laid out for us pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, of course, she does at the very end, the big closing. She makes it clear to him. But yeah, it's just because you can tell she's trying to hint it. She's trying to say, oh, yeah, I haven't seen his father in a long time, or he doesn't know his father, and his father lives in New York. And it's just kind of like, get the hint, buddy. Oh, by the way, he's 16 years old. Hint, hint, hint,
He's a baseball player,
quite...
not a mathematician.
Exactly. Exactly. So kind of as this is going on, you know, we have the whole drama of the judge, you know, that's all he's known as. He's not known. There's no other name. It's just the judge. And Gus, who was the big money guy, Gus Sands, guy with all the money. And then of course, Mimo. And they're getting concerned because the judge wants to take over the team. And if they make the pennant, he won't get the team. That's part of their contract, which is kind of an interesting part of the contract where if we make the pennant, you have to sell to me. If we don't, I have to sell to you.
I always thought, even watching that as a young guy, I always thought like that's like something that's like one of those bets you'd make. That's like one of those weird gambling bets you'd make that you never thought you'd have to own up to.
Yeah, I think it kind of was. I think it kind of was. It's one thing that's kind of thought about it as after I watched the movie. There's a lot of, you could tell they based some of the movie Major League off of this movie. Some of the plot lines kind of match. You know, you got the wild thing is the natural, you know, and things like that. I mean, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but you've got, we have to get the pennant, or otherwise we move they are going to move the team and we're all out of a job. In the case of this, it's, you know, we have to get the pennant or otherwise Pop loses the team and they'll probably all be out of a job. You know, same kind of thing.
Okay, I'm not the only one who thought of Major League. Okay, because yeah, in Major League 2, which was not as high, was a step down in a lot of cases. It did play up on the whole. He's when he gets distracted and civilized or whatever, he's not as good of a pitcher.
Right.
So yeah, I caught that too.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that, you know, again, this it became a, you know, kind of a classic baseball movie, so it makes sense that other movies would pull off of different themes from this.
Oh, totally.
Of course, Major League was much funnier, but this was funny, but Major League was much funnier.
Yeah,
the original.
Yeah. Well, different types of humor. Yeah,
yeah, different type of humor, definitely. Not something we're going to talk about on here. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Robert Redford, different type of humor. So
yeah.
What I find interesting though, it's like, you know, when he meets the judge, especially, you know, once again, like you were talking about the light and the dark. There he is, you know, in the dark, and then, but also it's interesting because it's like when, you know, Harriet Bird talks to him, she's talking to him about what are your goals in life, in a sense. And he's like, I just want to be the best. And she's like, no, there's more, isn't there? Then he talks to the judge and he's like, the judge is telling him, well, you should be thinking about your future. And it's like, there's so many throughout the movie, everybody's talking about his future, even Mimo later on. And Iris, you know, Iris is more listen to him and give advice, whereas other people are telling him, this is what you should do with your future. This is what you should, you know, it's, you know, Gus Sands, this is what, you know, if you do this for me, then, you know, you'll have your future set with this. And maybe that's kind of like having lost a father, you know, early on. He struggles with, you know, the idea of what my future is. He's looking at, you know, or trying to find some guidance or advice and not having that until maybe Iris comes back in his life. Then,
well, there's even that connection to that past where when they're talking, Iris and Roy are talking, you asked about the farm. He said, oh, there's always going to be, I didn't sell it. There's always going to be the farm. You know, kind of basically saying this is it, kind of like giving the advice for your future maybe needs to be your past on the farm instead of, you know, going out and being the superstar and making all the money and all that kind of stuff. Again, it's that parallel, like I said, light and dark, good and evil. You know, Iris is the you know, the light, the good side, the Mimo and the judge and Gus are the dark, the evil side, you know. You want to talk about the Force, you know. No.
What does that make Pop then? I don't know. Wolfram Brimley's character. I don't know. Not Yoda.
No.
Definitely not Yoda. So.
Kind of the wise older advisor though, or he's fun. He's always saying, I should have been a farmer.
Yeah.
I like animals. I like farming. You know, again, another reminder of going back to the farm. But he's fun. And then you had Red Farmer, and then another great character. Kind of becomes the first friend that Roy has on the team. Or Red Blow, excuse me, not Red Farmer, Red Blow. Kind of becomes the first friend that Roy has, and he kind of takes him under his wing a little bit and guides him to the point where he can stand up for himself and say, so that he could actually play.
Yeah, and his interaction with Roy as well as Pop is always he's always pretty much kind of like, or he makes those little subtle comments that that'll that are really good. That I think they use him mainly just to understand what the situation is. Mostly, it's like, this is Pop's situation because he's not getting it from Pop, and this is the judge's situation and everything. And
he's the exposition character.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. One scene I love is towards the end when Roy is hurting and Max is causing trouble. And he's out there with the camera, the old flash bulb camera, and he nails a home run right into him, causing him to drop the camera. Roy, even when he was sick, he didn't put up with that kind of stuff. Again, because that Max was also kind of on the, he's a fence straddler. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of how I saw him. Because he was part of that group, Mimo and Gus and the judge, but only as far as I think he felt his career was kind of hitched to them. But if he saw something else, he'd kind of go after them instead. And so,
opportunistic.
Exactly.
But you mentioned he was sick. I thought that was. I was trying to think of some silver. He was sick because of the silver bullet that was still in his body for 16 years, and that's something I still just silver bullets kind of have a meaning in some circles, and I didn't know if this movie was aiming for something with that or not, but it's just it's basically poisoning from years of it being in his body.
I think that's what it was, because silver is not going to break down as easily as maybe lead would.
True.
I mean, lead would poison in a different way.
And probably quicker, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, maybe silver bullets had some meaning for that stalker or something like that. But I just thought silver bullets they've never been common, but maybe back then it would have been easier to find somebody to craft something for you back then.
Could be.
But, silver bullets, I was like, before this movie, I thought that was pretty much either for Lone Rangers or werewolves. That's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's and one thing I like about this, I there's an interesting thing they do in the scene where he first gets sick. They're at the party, and Mimo gives something to him, like it looks like a little roll or something like that. Actually, looks like a little piece of sushi, although I doubt it was, because that wasn't very popular here in the States then. But but some little appetizer, and it almost played up like she had poisoned him. And that's why he got sick. And of course, it turns out that's when the worst of the effects of the bullet really kind of kicked in. Was at that moment, and then ends up at the maternity ward hospital.
You gotta go. It's
exactly.
Pick something.
I do think, though, Mimo did poison him or did something to him, because Gus comes to her right away after he can't talk, or bribe him, and says, I don't like to be disappointed. And, so she goes, and gives him that little hors d'oeuvre of whatever it was. And
yeah.
And it'd be interesting to know what that was about too, though.
Or it's possible too, as I think about it, maybe she did poison him, and that was because he was poisoned. They found the bullet.
Yeah, because if they were pumping his stomach for the poison, and then that came up, or something,
that would do it.
Yeah.
Hey, what's this? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, exactly. How'd this get in there? Oops. Kind of got missed 16 years ago.
Well, think back. I'm trying to remember exactly when, but by the late 30s and the 40s, X-rays were actually possible back then, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if they would have been common yet.
But they definitely would not have been during the late teens, early 20s.
No, because because I don't remember exactly when they were working on that technology. Curies were working on that technology, but I want to say that's late 1800s, early 1900s. So yeah, if it would have been, it would have been probably in experimental status even into World War II.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's the one thing I've never looked up. That's interesting.
Yeah. I read
thought about it.
I was reading a book about. I used to read stories, alternate history stories, and right around the 40s, X-rays were at least common knowledge about what they did. I don't know how, it's probably expensive as all get out, but just thought it was interesting. Like, they probably would have been able to find the bullet if you, being a celebrity and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not in the maternity ward, but you never know.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too, is the maternity ward might not have had anything like that anyways. So
would Google tell me the answer really quickly? By 1930, X-rays were routine part of patient diagnostics.
Okay. There we go.
Finally.
I mean, again, whether or not the hospital at a maternity ward would have had that for him, probably not. But
well, the thing was, though, was when he was shot, though, that was 16 years earlier from 30, so that would be 1923.
Yeah.
When, and in some small town, or well, he was in Chicago though at that point.
But even still,
right? But yeah, but it wasn't as common back then. But and he wasn't that famous. He was just some guy for a tryout for the Cubs at that point.
Exactly. And of course, that's while he's down in the hospital. That's when we have the judge come by with his bribe. $20,000, which back in 1939 would have been a lot of money. And of course, he throws it right on his stomach. You notice that he took the pouch and threw it right on his stomach on the thing that was causing him his problems.
And it's the one time the judge turns the light on.
Yep.
Because he's always in the dark, but he's still wearing black. As he shows up for that, and then. Before that, Mimo comes in to give her spiel of, do it for me. Don't play another game. We can be set up, with your future. And then the judge comes in and says, here's money for your future.
Yep.
And, all you have to do is what I want you to, don't focus.
Just throw the game.
And then they use the extra motivation or threat of the pictures from, the crime scene or, from back, when Harriet Bird shot him.
Yep. But interestingly, we have that scene. We don't hear it, but we see him and Iris talking as they're standing there, kind of on the outside of the ballpark there, talking about, and he's telling her everything that happened.
Right.
So even if we don't know what happened those 16 years, he's telling her what happened. So he's not worried about her finding out. In fact, when Max tries to confront her, she just kind of basically blows him off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when you see him as a kind of a weasel, more so than any other time, when he's trying. It's
a shame if these pictures leaked out.
And then I'm trying to do everything I can to protect them, make sure they don't. But that's really, though, when Iris, though, talks to him, that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, though. Because it's the perfect line when she says, when he's talking about the future and stuff too, and he says, well, what we, he's not going to be able to play again. And he always wanted to say, when you walk down the street, he was the best. There goes Roy Hobb, the best there ever was. But then she says, I believe we have two lives, the life we learn with and the life we live with after that. With or without the records, they'll remember you. And she gives him a perspective of, don't live in your regret, and looking at the past, look ahead, where you are now and all you did achieve. And it's perfect because here he is beginning his second life in a maternity ward.
Yeah.
So that's why, it's, so it's like he is born again and so he's sitting there and getting to start a second life. And she gives him the perspective probably that, his dad could have given him if he were around or something. Because, that's what he was been missing is he's been dwelling on all those negatives in the past and what he could have been versus what he did become. And and the impact he has had.
Yep.
And then again, but she still doesn't tell him at that point, or wants to tell him, and then the nurse comes in about his son. And it's like, that would have, maybe it would have been even a different experience then for him going into that last game. But
that is where he decides to play the last game, that he's going to do it for Pop. He's going to do it to finish off, that he wants to finish off that one last game, and he wants to help the team win.
Right.
And so he, despite, everybody saying don't do it, and despite the fact he's in obvious pain, he's still going to do it. He's still going to play that game. And he struggles. The team does okay, except the pitcher was also in the judge's pocket.
Right. Before the game starts, though, too. And he goes and gives the money back to the judge, saying, I'm not going to be in on this. I want to hit away and stuff. And then Gus Sands, kind of gives him, brings the movie back full circle to what his father said, in a sense, with not your yesterday's news kid, but that's the first part. But then he says, you have a great gift, a talent, but it's not enough.
Yep.
And just like his father said in the beginning, but except now,
throw him back at him then.
A real negative angle at the end of his career here. And I'll go ahead.
And it shows that Gus didn't know who he really was.
Right.
And neither did the judge, because the judge goes, well, I thought you had morals and I thought you, and of course it's like, well, I'm living them by giving the money back and not playing your game. I'm not taking your bribe.
And then when Roy comes to the conclusion that the other person in on it is that pitcher, Al Fowler, he goes up to talk to him, and Al's thinking, well, last he heard, Roy's going to throw the game too. So when he says, give him the good, the real stuff, Al, and he tells him, hey, I'll start pitching when you start hitting, because with the way Roy Hobbs was playing, it looked like he was trying to throw the game,
right.
Not because he was in pain and couldn't do it, but fortunately for them, though, the rest of the team didn't do well, and Al didn't have to keep throwing the game to, running the score up.
But then, of course, we get to the scene, the final scene of the game, where bottom of the ninth, 2 out, 2 runners on, down by 2. The whole just like the every kid's dream is to be in that position to win the game. And that's where Ira sends down the message telling him that her son is their son. And that's what inspires him. And you can see him trying to see her. He keeps looking around and trying to see if he can see her. But he gets up there, and that's when he hits the ball that basically destroys the lighting in the park. Kind of makes me wonder if a ball hits one bulb and it destroys the entire lighting system. No.
Building codes are more of a guideline than a rule back then.
Yeah. But no, it really is, and it's down to, if I remember, it's 2 strikes too, wasn't it? It was like,
I kind of wonder that, because they brought in that young pitcher again, the young Nebraskan farm boy. It was kind of like a replay of him versus the Whammer, except now the roles reversed. And the first pitch, he fouls it straight back, and it hits the glass by Max Mercy. And then I was thinking about that. I wonder if that, when Roy's pitching and he steps back, like you were saying earlier at the train, with the Whammer, because he's like, I think he's wild. Well, I wonder if that was kind of like another way of doing the same thing, except the foul ball coming back and hitting going after Max, and then the next foul ball was a home run, and it lightning strikes, and there goes Wonder Boy, cracking, and then little Bobby Savoy brings out his Savoy special bat.
Yep.
That he worked with Roy Hobbs to make, and then hits the amazing home run.
that first foul ball. I mean, Max looks out and Roy's looking right at him, so it's like that was on purpose. That was a forget you message type. Kind of foul ball. That was an aimed shot.
Yeah.
He wanted that one to go there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have that great shot, because he had Roy had made a friendship with Bobby, and it was like, I'd made, he was telling him, Bobby, that, I made this bat, and you know what, go to the lumber store, get a chunk of lumber, and I'll help you make your own.
Yeah.
And that's what he ends up using to win the game with this massive grand slam or 3-run homer.
And then you get the fireworks that aren't fireworks, but just lights exploding.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of dangerous. Probably some shrapnel there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it looks so cool. The sparks coming down around them, and just a iconic scene. One of the most iconic scenes from this movie. With him rounding the, you see him like, basically like the camera would be in line with second base, between first and second base. And you see him coming, and you see all the sparks behind him showering down from the lights.
And then there's the judge in his office with the others in the darkness, or mostly dark office.
Yep.
And the lights bright.
So, and final scene, he's playing catch with his boy in the same field he did with his dad, with Iris watching. So, happy ending.
No, just like kind of giving his son the chance to, pitch with his, dad as he's older than he never got. His dad died so early. So it was nice.
And I was just going to say, and as they transition, I thought you almost feel like, oh, we're going to get some more lights or firework kind of look. And then they actually end up in the field, because, with the weed or what, that's in the air kind of thing. That was a neat touch to.
Yeah. We don't know what happened to the team after they got the pennant, because they won the pennant, but they doesn't show what they did in playoffs or anything like that. It was just, they reached their goal. And that's another thing where I talk about Major League that they did too, is, they won the game to go into the postseason, and we don't see the postseason. Of course, watch the next movie. I think they lost out like in the first round or whatever, but
yeah.
But still, they made it to the playoffs, and it's that same kind of idea. It's like, we don't know how the Knights did, if they lost out in the playoffs or what. But so, anything else either you have to say about this great movie?
Well, one thing I thought about that I liked too was when he's playing well in the beginning, and then I think it's John Olson, if I remember right, the name, comes up to him and he says, "Hey, I like that lightning bolt." Talks about the bat.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, "I like that lightning bolt. It reminds me of something that, what were they, like Flying Aces would have, or something like
Yeah, the unit patches.
Right, the unit patches, and then he puts one on, and then he starts playing well.
Yeah,
and then the whole team lines up, and then they all have them on, for the next game or whatever. And and since Pop Fishers is such a superstitious guy, thinks he's jinxed, there's the superstition that plays out, and there's so many superstitions in baseball to begin with, like guys who will run off the field and not touch the line with their shoe, or whatever it might be, and certain mannerisms and stuff. So it's like that was like something I always enjoyed, was the superstitious stuff that they really added into the movie like that. And
well, it's kind of funny you talk about superstitions. That's one thing that's changed in baseball in the recent year, is with the pitch clock.
Oh yeah,
because you always had the batter that would step out and readjust their gloves and poke around, and then they get back in. Well, now they've got 15 seconds. They got to get out, get back in. They don't have time to be messing with their gloves and all this stuff. Or pitchers that, they've got their routine that they do, that they look a certain way, and now they can't do that. So they're kind of taking away a little bit of that superstition with the pitch clock. But
overall, for just the movie, I just like, they're pretty simple messages, where just if you have even for a character nicknamed the natural talent isn't enough, and whatever you do, just basic message of natural talent isn't enough to and be true to yourself the whole, and or you might lose your way, and that's kind of a constant throughout this whole thing. So it's pretty simple, but it's one of those lessons that kind of has to be retold over and over, because we don't really, obviously that doesn't stick sometimes. It's a good lesson to always hear.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing we kind of mentioned some of the actors that are in this, and this is actually an all-star cast. I mean, you look at the list of actors in this, it's incredible. Of course, Robert Redford was Roy Hobbs. Robert Duvall was Max Mercy. You know, he's always one of those characters that's so great to see on screen.
He's great in almost all the way up to Secondhand Lions. He's great. Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's just such a great actor. Glenn Close was Iris Gaines. Kim Basinger, Mimo Paris. I admit I forgot how beautiful she was way back when.
She could do a good femme fatale. Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wilford Brimley, as we mentioned, for Pop Fisher. Barbara Hershey was Harriet Bird, another great actress from back then. Robert Prosky is one of those the judge is one of those character actors you see in everything. I mean, he's just all over the place. And he always plays kind of the conniving type of character, you know, kind of that kind of character that's got, you know, an ulterior motive. Then the Whammer was Joe Don Baker, another one of those character actors that, again, he always plays that grouchy character. I mean,
Walking Tall.
Yep. Oh yeah. And then Darren McGavin is Gus Sands. Now, I think a lot of us would recognize him from A Christmas Story. He was the dad in A Christmas Story. That's where we would recognize him from. But he's another actor that was all over the place.
He was the, hey, it's that guy kind of a person from that era.
Yep. He was one of those. Yeah. Well, very good. And as we wrap up, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who made it possible for us to create the secrets of movies and TV, including Richard C., Andrew C., Santa S., Kathy S., and Mark M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Be sure to follow the secrets of movies and TV on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or other podcast apps. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. If you've enjoyed this discussion, please share it with your friends and help us grow our audience. To find other discussions of movies and TV shows or to send feedback, please visit sqpn.com/secrets. Our email for feedback is secrets@sqpn.com. You can follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on Twitter at SQPN. You can also join the discussion on our Discord at sqpn.com/Discord. So as we close, David Handlos, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of the natural.
Thanks for inviting me.
And Jon Koral, thank you as well.
Thank you. Had a great time.
And once again, I'm Father Cory Sticha. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of the Natural on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. Let's Science. Find the show wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/science.